Good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar on rooftop solar for C&I consumers in Tamil Nadu by Auroville Green Practices. This training session will be taken by my colleagues Frano and Radhika. I am handing it over to Radhika. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending this online training session, Economic Feasibility of Rooftop Solar for CNI consumers in Tamil Nadu. Today's session will be presented by my colleague Frano De Silva and me, Radhika. We both are renewable energy analysts at Auroville Consulting. Thank you for attending. Thank you for your patience in waiting for everybody to join. Moving on. This initiative is a part of the Sustainable Energy Transformation of Tamil Nadu, or SCTTN, which is a joint collaborative initiative of Auroville Consulting, Citizen Consumer and Civic Action Group, and the World Resources Institute. To know more about this initiative, please click on the link below or please visit the website sctn.energy. Thank you. Moving on, the agenda for today would be to walk you through the process of designing an economically feasible rooftop solar system. This will start with an introduction to the web Solsavi tool with a demo and also an analysis of the results that are generated with the tool for you to better understand how the tool works and how can you interpret the results. And this will follow with a question and answer session on the topics covered in this training session. During the webinar, I request you all to participate in the multiple polls and multiple choice questions that will be shown in your screens. This is to better understand, for us to better understand how much you've grasped the concept. There will also be breakout rooms, or there will also be a chance for you to simulate your own scenario with using the web tool. I would request you all to please hold your queries until the end of the session, and this session will be recorded for internal use as well as will be circulated to you post the session. Before we move on to the training, I would like to pose a question to all of you, and I would request all of you to please answer this for us for our better understanding. Can we please have the poll, Fran? So, how many of you are aware of the current Tamil Nadu solar energy policy and its regulations? I request you all to either click yes or no, and I would request everyone here to participate in this for us to better understand this. I will wait for a few more seconds for everybody to answer. Please answer if you are aware, whether or not you are aware of the current Tamil Nadu solar energy policy and its regulations. Thank you for answering the poll. I see here that 87% of you are unaware of the current Tamil Nadu solar energy policy and its regulations, and only 13% of you are aware. So our goal with this webinar is to walk you through these or give you a gist of these so that you're better aware. So moving on, the Tamil Nadu solar energy policy was reframed in the year 2019, which is a guideline for all the rooftop solar systems currently. The generic tariff order for grid interactive solar systems was introduced in 2021, and the different changes that happened or that were given in this tariff order is mentioned here. The first thing is, when it comes to the metering mechanisms, net metering mechanisms was introduced for domestic consumers, giving them an option to choose between net metering and net feed-in. Net feeding is valid for all consumers with the rooftop solar, including high tension consumers. Gross metering was introduced for high tension consumers, that is for system sizes larger than 150 kilowatt. The other features that included are the network charges were introduced in this tariff order. That is, the charges are levied on your gross generation of solar energy. The premium charges or time of the day tariff was introduced to compensate for the excess solar energy generated from your system and to compensate for the excess demand in energy in the grid during peak hours. There's been a tariff revision for net feed-in mechanisms, and as you can see in the box to your right, it varies from system. It varies in different system sizes, ranging from 0 to 10 kilowatt to 11 to 150 kilowatt and 151 to 999 kilowatt, which is the maximum permitted solar capacity. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Frano de Silva, who will take the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Radhika, for the introduction. I hope I'm audible to all the participants. And to carry forward from what Radhika was mentioning, now that we have understood the solar energy policies and the implementation framework through the regulation that has been set in the later half of the last year, we would then jump in to design our rooftop solar system based on for our location and our consumption patterns. To gather information about how we can decide our consumption pattern or the information needed for us to develop or design a rooftop solar system, we take the help of an electricity bill. On your screen, we have an example of an electricity HT connection bill in Tamil Nadu. And as you can see, we have highlighted portions such as which details out the sanction load of that particular area or that particular connection, along with the tariff categories that is applicable and the applicable tariff rate for that particular category. We also have the applicable time period for this billing cycle, the consumption of units in that billing cycle for that connection, and finally we have the payment that has to be done at the end of billing cycle. So from the consumption from the electricity bill, we can develop a lot of understanding about our consumption pattern. So moving on to understand what is the consumption profile, we take the interpretation of a daily electricity consumption and how to interpret that in the Solsavi web tool. We will take you through the process, how we have tried to integrate the consumption profile and how it could be done through design as well as in Solsavi web tool. But before that, I would also like to show you a comparison. So let's say that a monthly connection has a monthly average consumption of 1000 units per month, and then that would lead to a daily average of 32.25 kilowatt hours per day. But we have two consumption profiles in front of you on the screen. The consumption profile A would indicate that the consumption of electricity in that connection is happening consistently and constantly at a constant rate for all 24 hours. That is the profile A. While the profile B indicates a slow start at 6 a.m., further higher peak developed at 10 a.m., continuing till evening 6 p.m., and a drop in the consumption after 6 to 10 p.m. and further drop from 10 to 6 in the morning. So here I would like to pose a question to the participants that what do they think about this consumption profile and which would be the most appropriate representation of the industrial consumer. You can find this poll on your screen now. Please indicate your answers if you think A would be an approximate representation or B would be an approximate representation for an industrial consumer. Please take your time on this and answer, and we would like all the participants to answer this question so we could also be aware of how this consumption profile is perceived by the participants. I hope the poll is visible to all participants and they are able to participate in this poll. If you're finding it difficult, please mention it in the chat so that maybe we could help you or guide you to do the polls. So I will end the poll now and share the results of the poll with you. We have 15 participants who have participated in the poll, and 60% of the participants think that the representation of consumption profile A is most approximate representation of industrial consumer, while 40% think B is. And I would say that I would agree with the participants who have answered that the consumption profile in B represents a most approximate representation for industrial consumers, because it would be very difficult to imagine a consumption profile, electricity consumption profile, which is constantly being consumed over a period of 24 years. While if we can see from the slide that this consumption profile, the consumption profile B, offers us a better view on how the electricity consumption varies over a period of time for an industrial consumer. As you can see, at 6 o'clock in the morning, there may be a slow start. It might be the beginning of this first shift, peaking at between 10 to 6 p.m., signifying maximum production at that time, and then further the production gets lowered or the consumption gets lowered during the night hours, and a drop to the base load of the industrial sector for the V hours in the morning. So taking this as an approximate representation of the industrial consumer, we then try to simulate or try to recreate this in the Solsavi web tool that we have developed. And how do we try to do that? Well, what we do is, as you can see in the graph, on the x-axis we have the number of hours that are present in the day, while on the y-axis we have the units that are consumed per kilowatt in the hour. And we take time section, we take this 24 hours and we divide this 24 hours into 4 time sections as represented in the table on the slide, and we allocate a certain percentage of electricity consumption in those time sections to create this consumption profile in Solsavi web tool. Now that we have realized that this is the way that we could recreate our electricity consumption profile in the web tool or using the web tool, we would also like to know how this consumption profile would change when a solar system has been introduced in the location. So we would imagine that a certain portion of the load is taken by the solar system that has been installed. And moving further, we could see a representation in this graph where we have installed a solar system that contributes to 30% of the load or 30% of the consumption in the day, and the grid provides 70% of the consumption. As indicated in the graph, the blue portion is the electricity that has been supplied by the grid, while the green portion would be indicative of the energy that has been supplied by the solar system installed to satisfy your load or your consumption requirement at that particular time during solar hours. And if you could notice the orange hashed portion, this indicates the amount of export that is possible with your consumption profile for the installed solar system at your location. Please also note that the red line that forms a curve starting at around 9 a.m. and ending at around 4 p.m. in the evening indicates the maximum solar generation from the installed solar capacity in the location, and the area under that curve falls under solar hours and could represent the maximum solar generation from the installed capacity during those hours. In this system, we have assumed that the solar system contributes to 30% of the load, that is your electricity requirement, and from the 30% and also the 50% of electricity generated from solar system is exported to grid to generate revenue through applicable metering mechanisms. Now that we have understood and realized that our consumption profile, when solar system is installed, has many parameters such as your grid, which satisfies your consumption, the solar system that satisfies your electricity requirement, and also a revenue generating option where we can export the excess solar that is generated from our system back to the grid. To do this accounting, we have to use the energy accounting that are applicable for rooftop solar systems. And as mentioned by my colleague earlier, Tamil Nadu has net metering, net feed-in, and gross metering options for rooftop solar installations. Moving further to how do we account for this energy, we will launch a poll, and we would like you to answer this poll to understand better how we take into consideration the definitions of feed-in mechanisms. So the question is, the net in net feed-in stands for, does it stand for net unit, that is the kilowatt hour consumption, or the net amount, that is the rupees payable at the end of the billing cycle? Please indicate which option you think is relevant to net feed-in mechanism that is applicable also in Tamil Nadu. We would wait for a couple of more seconds for participants to provide their answers, and we request all participants to participate in the poll, as we would get an indication of how the participants understand the metering mechanisms. I would end the poll now if most of the participants have already answered, and share the results so that we can see the results. And as you can see on your screen, approximately 80% participants think that the net in net feed-in stands for net unit consumption, while only 21% think that it stands for a net amount payable at the end of billing cycle. To further explain this clearly, we take a representation of the metering mechanisms that are available. For participants who mentioned that net feed-in mechanisms and the net that in feed-in mechanism represents net unit consumption, would be incorrect to assume that, because as you can see here, the net metering and the net feed-in mechanism have a similar arrangement, which use a bidirectional meter that records how much you have consumed from the grid as well as how much you have exported to the grid. If you see the formula for the net metering mechanism, you could see that the units that is supplied from the grid is then minus with the exported units that are supplied to the grid by the solar system. So the net metering mechanism would be a mechanism that does the net of the units or the difference of the units for its energy accounting. While the net feed-in mechanism, as you notice from the formula or the calculation formula, that the grid supplied units for your consumption is then multiplied to the grid applicable grid tariff, and how much ever amount that you have exported to the grid from your system is further applied on the net feed-in tariff, and the net in net feed-in would then stand for the net amount payable at the end of billing cycle. Both net metering and net feed-in mechanism encourage self-consumption. That is to say that the solar energy that is being generated from the installed solar system also can be used to satisfy a portion of your electricity load and the excess could then be given out to the grid to generate revenue. However, in the gross metering mechanism, as noticed, we have two different meters to record the consumption from the grid as well as to record the export to the grid from the installed solar system. The calculation also indicates to us that the export is taken at a total generation of the solar from the installed system. That is, no self-consumption is encouraged in the gross metering mechanism. To further elaborate on these metering mechanisms, let's see how the metering arrangement is energy accounting is carried off in case of net feed-in and gross metering mechanisms. So, considering a net feed-in mechanism, we take a monthly average as considered before as 1000 units per month. We take a grid to load contribution of 70% and 30% being contributed by the installed solar system, while 50% of whatever is generated by the solar system is exported to generate revenue. We take a case of industrial HT consumer who has a grid tariff of 6.35 rupees per kilowatt hour. With a business as usual billing mechanism, we take the formula and we find out how much total bill we have to pay on the grid supplied units. In case of net feed-in mechanism, we apply the formula and we multiply the grid consumed units to the applicable tariff and take the difference from the exported units at the net feed-in tariff. So this would be the net amount payable at the end of the billing cycle. As you can see, the installation of a solar system provides a saving as compared to business as usual if a net feed-in mechanism is taken. So let's continue and see how gross metering mechanisms fares in this energy accounting after the installation of a solar system. As you can see, we have taken the industrial grid tariff and have the same system, but there is no contribution from the solar system to satisfy your electricity consumption in case of gross metering, because all or total energy that is generated by the solar system is exported directly to grid, and you are charged for those exported units at the gross feed-in tariff that is applicable for your category under the voltage type for the consumer. As you can see in the gross metering calculation, the grid total grid supplied units, that is the 1000 units that is required, is multiplied by the grid tariff. Further, the total solar generation from your installed system is then multiplied with the gross feed-in tariff for that consumer, and the difference is payable at the end of the billing cycle. Initially, while talking about the regulations and the policies, Radhika also mentioned an introduction of network charges. We would briefly talk about what are network charges and how they impact our energy accounting in the next couple of slides. To explain network charges briefly, we would say that network charges are grid support charges paid by the user to the distribution licensee for connection to grid. Network charges includes total generation of solar energy, that is the self-consumption part as well as the exported to grid part of the solar energy. Network charge is applicable only for the net metering and the net feed-in mechanism. As seen from the table, for CNI consumers under different voltage type, we have the network charges for varying metering mechanisms such as net feed-in and gross metering. There is no network charge applicable for gross metering mechanism. And you can see the different network charges applicable for the LT consumer as well as the HT consumer under commercial and industrial consumer tariff. So taking network charge into consideration, we apply this to the energy accounting after installation of solar system and do our calculation for net feed-in and gross metering again. If you notice, we have added the total solar generation and multiplied with the applicable network charge for that particular consumer, and we have calculated the new bill to be paid at the end of billing cycle by this consumer. Similarly, for the gross metering mechanism, we don't have any network charge, hence 0 rupees or 0 rupees per unit has been applied in case of gross metering, and the bill amount remains the same in case of gross metering. Once we have realized the energy accounting and how to account for our consumption of electricity after the installation of a solar system, we move to see how we have tried to optimize the results in the Solsavi web tool. For optimization criteria, we were looking to maximize our avoided cost, maximize the savings that are possible from the installed solar system, and also to minimize the payback for the solar system installed. Some of the important parameters for us to consider to optimize the solution was to check the self-consumption from this installed system, how much we could export to the grid, also be aware of how much we are importing from the grid and consuming to satisfy the electricity demand at our connection. To explain a bit about what are avoided costs, I will take help of this graph that has been shown on your slide. If you can see on the graph, the x-axis is represented by the years ranging from 2021 to 2029, and the y-axis has the units in INR per kilowatt hour. That is the grid, that is the tariff that is paid for each unit of electricity supply. So in the case of rooftop solar, if we are to find the generation cost for the lifetime of rooftop solar and considering the lifetime of the system, we see that the cost of generation from rooftop solar is between 4 to 5 rupees per kilowatt and remains fairly same till the end of the decade. However, if we take the HT industrial grid tariff, which is between 6 to 7 rupees, that is 6.35 rupees per kilowatt hour, we could fairly assume that this tariff would eventually increase year on year or over a period of time as compared to the rooftop solar system. And finally, if you see over a period of time, the area between these two curves could result to a potential saving or the potential avoided cost with installation of rooftop solar. So these parameters were taken into consideration to design an optimum system that can provide an economic feasibility for the rooftop solar installation. To have a fair calculation, we have also included the benchmark cost suggested by the MNRE in the latter half of the last year. The benchmark cost includes the inverter and the other balance of system costs. The benchmark costs are suggestions and could be modified in the tool depending on the quotations you have received personally from your developer or from your industrial experience. While for a hybrid system and a battery system, that is the battery system, we take a hybrid inverter as well as the battery system cost from research, and we have provided the references at the below of this slide. We will also be sharing this slide with the participants at the end of the session so that they could have reference of the presentation. So now that we have learned the various metering mechanisms that are applicable in Tamil Nadu for CNI consumers, we have also seen how installation of solar system could take a certain portion of the load or the consumption profile of the user. And we have also realized how to do the energy accounting of that, of your connection after the installation of rooftop solar. Here, before moving further, we would like to pose a question to the participants. on what are your motivations for installing rooftop solar. We would ask this question in form of poll, where we would like you to answer if you would like what are your motivations, whether they are financially based, whether they are based because of some legal requirements, and or they have economical benefits that appeal to you for the installation of the rooftop solar. Thank you for answering the poll. I would share the results with you, and we could see that majority of the participants think it's a financial and economical benefit that leads them to decide and motivate on installation of rooftop solar. While we present some other benefits as well, which we could reap from installation of rooftop solar. For example, we could say that in Tamil Nadu, it is a requirement for high-rise and non-high-rise buildings exceeding 16 dwelling units and having a 300 square meter of commercial building area to have at least 1/3 of their rooftop area covered with solar energy systems. The second option would be motivation would be the environmental concerns, that is, by installation of rooftop solar and generation from renewable sources, we could contribute to lower emissions from generation of electricity. And also, some companies or some developers have the necessity to do an environmental social governance reporting, which could also help them in doing the ESG reporting. In case of financial returns, we do project a potential savings, that is a long-term savings, and also the avoided cost that is received with the installation of the solar system. Further, once we have assessed that we need the solar system or the rooftop solar system, the decision-making process for this would begin with the conception of the idea or the project, to check the feasibility of the project, to do a design and planning for the implementation or installation of the system, and finally operate and maintain the system over its lifetime period. During the feasibility project, we would require an alternate opinion, a detailed generation pattern from the system to make a estimate or to make an accurate estimation of the system size. We could also get an estimation from the potential savings and the investment required for that solar system. And we need to do this fairly quickly. So to do this quickly, we introduce the tool Solsavi. The tool would be updated with the tariffs, the latest policy regulations, as well as supports the analysis, which includes battery storage, provides a 25-year analysis and a financial analysis for the selected system, provides outputs in terms of return on investment, payback years, and potential savings. We also have an option in the web tool to either optimize depending on the inputs provided by the user, or customize depending on the desired capacity that the user wants to install at the location. To get familiar with the Solsavi web tool, we have designed two demo scenarios. The first scenario would be for a commercial building and HT category, while the second scenario would be for an industrial warehouse and LT category. The first simulation I would carry out in detail, and I would explain the process of simulating it in Solsavi web tool and explain the results initially. While the demo scenario 2, we could do it together simultaneously with all the participants and try and achieve the results while using the tool. So to further proceed and simulate this in Solsavi, I will stop sharing my screen now and shift to the web browser and share the web browser screen. I hope the screen is visible on your side. So this is the landing page for the Solsavi website. We will share the link of this website on the chat, so it's easier for you to access the website in case you would like to access the website during the presentation. We have few details about the website which tells us that this web tool helps us to determine the capacity, to calculate our savings, and to reduce our emissions. We also have a brief video to explain what we are looking to achieve from this web tool, and we do have a contact message button where the user could get in touch with the organizers or the people who can receive and manage the Solsavi site, along with some initial critical links for the Auroville Consulting organization. To proceed, we will press the Get Started button, which will take us to the demographic page. This is the demographic page where we define the location of our connection, the consumer type that we would like to apply the rooftop solar in, and the voltage type category. Here, while entering the pin code, I would enter the pin code for Chennai, and we would wait until the location have been displayed, because as you enter the pin code, in the backend, the database is being loaded for the weather files as well as policy and other regular tariff details for that location. So now that we have selected Chennai, we want to simulate a scenario for the commercial category under HT connection. So we select the HT and we move further to the next page by clicking next at the bottom of the page. At the policy page, we find the applicable metering mechanism for that consumer category and that voltage type in that location. For example, if I come back and if I change my voltage type to LT, we would get a different metering mechanism type. Hence, we have tried to use the updated policy requirements and the regulations to determine the applicable metering mechanisms for the consumer type under the voltage category and the location. So moving further, I change the voltage type to HT and move to the policy page where we select the net feed-in mechanism. You could find the details for each mechanism or each category in the I buttons, where we have tried to explain them and make them as clear to the user to make the best choice possible. Under the technology, we would try to simulate a solar plus battery technology for this demo. Moving further, we click the next and we land on to the consumption page. For this simulation, we have selected a sanction load of 120 kilowatt. As you notice, if we have a above sanction load of 113, we have the HT category, and if we mention a sanction load below the HT category minimum, we'll get a error message which will prompt us to enter the correct value. We define our electrical consumption either by selecting average monthly and providing an annual average, monthly average for your consumption, or we could also give a month-wise bill details for each month in the year to generate the load profile. In this case, we would give an average monthly of let's say 10,000 units of consumption on a monthly average. And to distribute the load, we will say, as it is a commercial building, we assume the peak to be between 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and allocating a 50% of the consumption in that time. We then distribute the percentages such that we can make a total of 100%. If the total does not amount to 100%, you will receive an error to correct it and make it 100%. Further, we also have an option to specify a different consumption pattern for the weekend. For example, if I select yes and proceed to the next page, I can then define my consumption pattern only for the weekend for the whole year. So in this case, let's say the consumption pattern is such that we are consuming 30 or 60% between 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then we reduce our consumption in the other hours. While on a total, we consume 25% lower on the weekend as compared to weekday. Providing such details could help us design an optimum solar rooftop system. Hence, please be sure to define and design your load correctly for a credible analysis or more accurate analysis for your connection. Now we have reached the technical page where we define the battery technology, system financials, and the dispatch strategy for your battery system. To select the battery, we have two types of battery technology options: lithium-ion battery and the advanced lead-acid battery. We have the details of these batteries in the I buttons. So please go through the I buttons to know more about what has been considered as assumptions for the battery technology system. For this analysis, we select the lithium-ion batteries, and as you can see, the system financials are generated on the selection of battery technology and the M&RA costs that have been put in place. We could change this cost and we could enter a value which is relevant or which you are comfortable with for the system financials. But these are just suggestions and will be updated accordingly when the benchmark costs are released by M&RE the next time. In case of battery dispatch strategy, we have two options to define our strategy. If you select the auto strategy, our battery system would charge between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. while it would discharge during 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. If selected the manual category, you would have to define the charging and the discharging hours if you do not agree to the charging and discharging hours mentioned in the auto selection. For this simulation, we select the auto category and move forward to the run page. Here, we have two options to proceed beyond to the results page. That is, either we can let the web tool optimize the requirements that have been provided as inputs and suggest system capacities to the user, or we could customize and enter the desired solar and battery capacity as required for our solar system. For the simulation of this particular demo, you would go to the optimize option. While working with this tool, we have tried to reduce the process time for generating results, and this will be our continual effort to reduce this time so as to provide you the information as soon as possible. We also have faced issues with concurrent requests, that is accessing the web tool at one particular time, and we are trying to resolve this issue by providing more options to the user and allowing concurrent requests at particular time. As you can see from the allocated systems, we have an initial negative savings for the first year, but we have a payback of 8 years and a selected battery system of 74 kilowatt as well as a battery capacity of 86.9 kilowatt. This page provides you with the summary of the results, where you can find out your financial savings, your return on investment, the solar generation from the system, your selected optimum battery and solar capacities, as well as the avoided emissions. To further get into and find out how you could improve the system, we get into the detailed report and we see the inputs that have been provided by us during the simulation and the load profile that has been generated in this case. Here I would like to show you that we can select a range of values to indicate the load profile for one particular week or more. And as you can see, we have changed the consumption pattern during weekends, and it is visible in our load pattern or load curve for the period of 1 week. Coming to the second part of our results, we show the financial analysis in this second part. As you can see on your left side, we have the system, suggested system size, the suggested battery capacity, and also the shade-free area required to install this solar system. We have the total cost that would be taken for this system, as well as the potential savings for 25 years and the savings in first year. The savings in first year also includes the total cost that is applicable, that is for your interest payment, for your loan payment, as well as the operating and maintenance cost has been included in the savings in the year 1 as well as 25 years saving. The graph on your right shows us the comparison between the electricity bill without system, that is the business as usual case, as well as we have electricity bill with system. And the potential savings from the installation of the system would then be the area between these two curves over a period of time. Finally, the detailed report also gives us the generation profile from the solar system, where we could see that from the system, 51% of your consumption is being taken care by the solar installed, while 31% is being taken care from the grid units consumed. 17 or close to 17% is supplied by the battery, and 30% of the solar generated is exported to grid. You can see that this consumption pattern or the generation from solar and contribution from load has been provided for today's day, and we could select any particular day in the year and it would give us a load profile for that particular day in that particular year. Hence, we could have an analysis of almost 1 year of how our solar system could behave and what changes could be estimated with the weather data. We also have the provision for you to check the assumptions at the end of the page, where we share what assumptions we have taken into consideration during our simulation of these results. Finally, you could also download by clicking the export to PDF button, and the detailed report then gets saved on your computer at the location you have chosen. To be able to simulate the second scenario, I will stop, return to the slides, show you the second scenario, and come back and try and simulate together this time. And we will try to do it so that all of them can follow the instructions and simulate it on your own laptop or PC. Moving to the second scenario, we would share the link in the chat box so that you could find it easier to just click on the link and access the website, or else you could also find this tool under the Auroville Consulting website and under tools and under Solsavi. So we would you could save this as bookmark and you could use it at a later period of time. But please click the link shared in the chat so that it will be easier for you to access the site during this webinar. For the second scenario, we are trying to simulate an industrial warehouse under the LT category with a sanction load of 55 kilowatt and a monthly average consumption of 5,000 units. So to recreate this, I would stop the screen again and then move to the next web browser to simulate this scenario. Please follow the instructions so that we can simulate it together and you could share your experience at the end of this webinar.
I hope everybody is able to access the website. Please do let us know if you're facing any issues.
Assuming that we are on the same page and most of the participants are following us on the web browser, please do indicate if you find it difficult to access the website in any condition. So moving further to simulate the demo scenario. For the demo 2, we get started by clicking the get started button and we give the same pin code as we gave earlier for Chennai. But here the consumer type we select would be the industrial consumer. Please select the industrial consumer on your Solsavi browser. The next step would be to select your voltage type, where we select the low tension category. Once we have selected all the options on the demographic page, we then move to the next policy page by clicking next at the bottom of the screen. Please do indicate if I'm moving too fast and you would like me to explain something again. When we land on the policy page, as you can see, the applicable metering mechanism for the consumer category selected under the voltage type is being presented to us in the policy page. And for the industrial LT consumer, we have the net feed-in mechanism that is applicable. Hence, we select the net feed-in mechanism. And for this demo 2 scenario, we would select a solar only case and hence select the solar only case and we click next before moving on to the next page. I would like to wait here and allow the participants to complete filling the demographic and policy page in case they have not or been able to fill them yet.
Please do indicate to us if you have any issues while moving on to the next page.
Assuming we all are on the same page, moving on to define a consumption, we press the next button at the end of the page and we land on the consumption page. The sanction load selected for this demo scenario was 55 kilowatt. So please enter the appropriate sanction load, select the average monthly option and enter 5,000 units, as we have selected 5,000 to be a monthly average for this particular connection. To distribute the load, we would say that this particular consumer consumes 70% of its load between 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. and further 30% between the other hours of the day, that is from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And we would not define a different weekend consumption. We would define the same weekend consumption for this connection. Moving further to the technical page, we see that we do not have any battery selection on this page because we have selected only a solar only case. And the system financials have been indicated according to the MNRE benchmark costs. Moving further to the run case, we have an option to optimize or customize. And as in the previous demo scenario, we used the optimize option. In this, we would select the customize option and enter the desired solar capacity. Here, the limitation on the solar capacity according to the policy would depend on your sanction load. Hence, as we had seen earlier that our sanction load is 55 kilowatt, we cannot install a solar capacity above 55 or the sanction load capacity. Hence, we would have to select a sanction load from 1 to 55 for our customized analysis. Hence, selecting 10 as the desired solar capacity of installation, I would proceed further with the simulation. Here, I would suggest the participants to enter your desired solar capacity before running to see what that result for the 25 analysis could be. I have selected 10, but you could change this value and put an appropriate value according to your assumption while simulating the scenario. To simulate the scenario, please click Run Calculator and wait for the results to present itself on the screen. As you can see, the results are on your screen and they show a payback, annual savings and a payback of 4 years with a solar system installation of 10 kilowatt and a daily solar generation of 37.82. We further get into detailed report and see how our inputs as well as our range of load data represents and further see the system financials that provide us the savings. As you can see, for the 10 kilowatt system, we would require 100 meters square of shadow-free area. This would result in an installation cost of 3,82,000, providing a 25-year savings as well as a payback of 4 years. On the right, you have the comparison of electricity bill without system and electricity bill with system. We also have the energy sourcing for this particular system as seen, where 23% of the load is satisfied by solar system installed and 77 is from the grid. This system does not give any export energy to the grid, nor uses battery as we have selected only solar only case for our simulation. You could download the results by clicking export to PDF button and download a 2-page result summary as well as detailed report for your further analysis. To be able to further modify or change your results, you could make use of the button called revise calculation on the summary page of your results, and this would take you back to the demographic page where you could further modify and change any selection that has been happened, and or come to the customized page and provide a different input to see how your system varies with a higher solar capacity, and download the results and use it for comparison. As you could see, maybe we have a lower return on investment when 20 kilowatt system is installed as compared to 10 kilowatt system. And this comparison could help us determine what could be the best system that we could install for our connection and our consumption pattern. I would like to stop presenting the web browser here and return back to the presentation. And end the session here and move to the question answer phase. And we would encourage the participants to please ask questions through maybe the chat box, so it would be easier for us to answer and take each question. So please do indicate if you have any questions or any queries about the tool or if about the information that has been shared. Please do indicate in the chats so that we are aware of what we could improve on, and maybe we could take some questions and solve them immediately in this session.
So Frano, Mr. Som Ishwar Murthy asks us, is solar without battery better for most cases?
Thank you for your question. It would be a difficult answer to give at this moment, but we could fairly say from our analysis and from the web tool, we have realized that the system financials for battery for now do not encourage solar plus battery case, but eventually we assume that this battery cost will fall over a period of time and encourage adoption of battery as well as solar technology. I hope that is answer that is satisfying your query.
Is it a choice of consumer to opt for metering mechanisms? Which one is better for domestic consumer? So Nitin, I can answer your question. So only domestic consumers have the choice to choose between net metering and net feed-in. Which one is better? I can share a briefing note that we wrote explaining that for what solar capacities and what consumption monthly average consumption is net metering favorable or net feed-in favorable. But on an average, for higher solar capacities and higher consumptions, net feed-in is the most desirable metering mechanism. I hope that answers your question.
We would also request the participants, if they have any feedback, to please share it on the chat and or get in touch with us to provide your feedback so we could improve the content if there is any improvement, or we could improve on the delivery of the webinar, as well as if it is some suggestions on the tools, we could also incorporate them if possible in the web tool.
Yes.
I see Mr. Balakrishnan has raised his hand. I would request Mr. Balakrishnan to use the chat if possible to ask the query.
Or you can, and if you can unmute yourself and ask the question if.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Thank you. This is about the load pattern. You have indicate the load pattern should be 100%. This is something, I mean, if I say my load is, my sanction load is, let's say 100 kilowatt, I'm consuming a whole day, it is 80%, 80 kilowatt. But you have, the tool says morning 6 to 10 or 10 to 6 or there the total should be 100%. It doesn't match.
What we mean by
yeah, and the consumption pattern, I can say it is it's okay, but on the load pattern, it is yeah, I can't say, because I am consuming from morning 8 to evening 6 100 kilowatt continuously. The load, I mean, so the where the total cannot be made as 100%.
What I would say, I mean, what we try to achieve there is that we take the 100%. For example, as you mentioned, that you consume most of your energy from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and let's say it's 80 kilowatt hours. So we would say that we take the 24 hours of your consumption pattern and see in which time sections you're consuming how much percentage of your load. That would mean that you would have to see that between 8 in the morning to 6 in the evening, in that time section, what is the percentage of your whole load that is being consumed in that particular time section. And because we have limited the time sections to 6 to 10, 10 to 6 and continually for 24 hours, we have to have at least an estimation of how much percentage of load we consume in that particular time section. I hope that helps you, Mr. Balakrishnan. I have a question from Mr. Brahmanand here. He asks with the Zoom, with the demo scenarios, we had a return of investment low even for a payback period of 4 years. I would like to point it out here that the return of investment that has been calculated here is annualized for 25 years. That is, we take all the savings for 25 years, we take the cost for 25 years, and also we divide all that for 25 years so that we are getting an annualized ROI for the period of analysis. And that is why we get a low return on investment even if our payback is 4 years. So it would mean that we wait for 25 years to calculate our return on investment for the installed system. I hope that answers your question, Mr. Brahman.
Franu, we have another question from Mr. Srihari Subramaniam. What is the difference between net metering and net feed-in?
Maybe I can show you this slide again where we discussed this earlier so that it would be much clearer to the participant.
Please note that all your questions will be answered. We have a lot of questions coming in, so we will try our best to answer all your queries. Thank you for your patience.
As seen from this slide, the difference between net metering and net feed-in is the energy accounting or the calculation procedure. In net metering, we take the difference or the net between the units that are being consumed. That is, in this calculation formula, the grid supply is represented by A and the export is represented by B. And we would take the difference of these units. While in net feed-in, we calculate the amount to be paid for the grid supplied units, and we calculate how much has to be paid for the export, and we take the difference of this amount. That would be the main difference between these two metering mechanisms. I hope that answers the question.
We have one more question from Mr. Som Ishwarmurthy. For commercial consumers, what are the options for metering? What metering mechanisms are available for commercial consumers? Can you please go to that slide, Fran? Yes.
Yes, Radhika, would you like to take this question?
Yes, I can. So I would like to tell you that net feed-in is valid for all consumers, including high tension categories. Net metering is only valid for domestic consumers. So only domestic consumers have the option of choosing between net metering and net feed-in. And if you see for gross metering is only valid for high tension consumers with system sizes larger than 150 kilowatt. So to answer your question, for commercial, ideally for commercial, only net feed-in would be valid as a metering mechanism.
Hello.
Yes.
Madam, I'm Sivakumar. In the existing policy, so in HT connections, so no option to export any units. In current policy, HT connections, can we export?
Yes, if you have HT yes, with system size larger than 150 kilowatt HT consumers, yes, you can export.
Yes, 300 kilowatt.
Sorry.
300 kilowatts, madam. HT connection 300 kilowatts.
Yes.
So if any excess units mean in net feed systems, can we export the export, ma'am?
Yes, you can export. I hope that answers your question. Yes, you can export, but that would come under a gross metering mechanism. That is, net feed-in is valid only for up to 150 kilowatt systems. Above that, it will become gross metering for high tension consumers. So yes, you can export. If
currently above 150 kilowatt means only gross metering system only, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, madam.
Yeah. I have, sorry, I'm trying to pull up all your questions. How significant is the weekend data for without battery system? Frano, would you like to answer this question?
Sure, Radhika. I mean, what we could indicate is that the weekend consumption pattern allows us to formulate a detailed consumption or load consumption for us, and that allows a better analysis over a period of time. If we relate it with battery, yes, it does impact your consumption, because if we are to say that in weekend we do not consume much, then the battery capacity in that would then be lower and it would impact your results. So defining the weekend consumption could be necessary to get an accurate result. That is answer that satisfies your query.
Yes. I have a question from Amanda. Which other states can this tool be used for? This tool can be used currently for Tamil Nadu, but we are, soon it will be available for all other states as well. We are adding data, and soon it will be available for the other states as well. I have another question. In many states, including Kerala, they have separate tariff for, sorry?
I'm sorry, I'm facing a bit of internet issues here.
In many states, including Kerala, they have separate tariffs for export and import under net metering scheme. But is that net metering scheme? Isn't that net feed-in? Yes. Frano, we can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
Radhika, can you repeat the question, please? I missed it.
In many states, including Kerala, they have a separate tariff for export and import under the net metering scheme. But is that the net metering scheme? Isn't that net feed-in? So in net metering, you're only accounting for the units that you consume from the grid and you export to the grid. So the charge that you pay is the difference of what you consume from the grid and you export to the grid. So what you export to the grid also, the units will be, so the net amount is paid to the import from the grid and the export for the grid. That is that difference into the tariff. The applicable tariff is net metering, and in net feed-in, you have a separate feed-in rate of depending on the state. And so what you pay is what you import from the grid and what you export to the grid multiplied by the net feed-in rate. I hope that answers your question. We have another question. Sir, can this tool also optimize for PIN codes outside Tamil Nadu? As I mentioned, currently this tool is available for Tamil Nadu, but it will soon be available for other states as well. And for those who are still unable to follow with the metering mechanisms or have any other doubts in the slides, we will definitely be sharing this presentation with you and supporting documents so that you can better understand the concepts presented here. Frano, the question is, does the tool take into account the performance reduction of solar panel over a period of time?
Yes, we do take consideration of 1% degradation every year for the solar panel. So that has been considered into the analysis. That is our assumption that we take.
The solar system cost, is it the real cost or an example? Scenario 1, you have indicated inverter cost. Scenario 2 is not showing inverter cost.
If you have noticed the benchmark cost for MNRE, the benchmark cost of MNRE include the inverter, and hence with the solar only case, the benchmark cost for solar system includes inverter and balance of system cost. While when we come to the solar plus battery case, we would require a hybrid inverter, which would then change the estimation for the inverter cost, and hence we provide the inverter option there in the technical page to present the hybrid inverter cost and give suggestions on the hybrid inverter cost.
Are the meters installed by Tangent Code different for net metering and net feed-in? Can we switch from one to the other, one mechanism to the other in the same year?
Yes, you could switch between the metering mechanisms. However, the time required to process the application, I'm not very sure of that, but it would require you to send in an application and get feedback from the TNEB to switch from net feed-in to net metering. From net feed-in to net metering or the vice versa. Yes, we do require only one bidirectional meter in both the metering mechanism cases.
Nitin asked this question here. Are we assuming that the grid support is available 24 hours? Yes, that's based on our assumption. We are assuming that the grid support is available 24 hours.
Adhika, if we don't have more questions, maybe we close the session, and if there are questions, we give them a reply on mail.
Yes. Thank you everyone for attending this session. I hope it was useful for you. If you have any questions regarding the tool or any other queries, you can email either Frano or me. You can also use the chat box that is available in the Solsavi website. We hope that this tool is useful for you, your business, and I hope you make use of this tool. This tool is free and available to everybody. So I hope this presentation was helpful. Please email us if you have any queries. Frano, if you could display our contact details on the screen. And yes, you will be given a recording of the webinar with the presentation as well. So if you have any doubts, you can refer to it. Yeah, and you can reach out to me or Frano in these contact details. Thank you all for attending, and I hope you have a great evening.